And welcome to the Public Speaking Expert Podcast. And today, I'm going to start dramatically.
Five, four, three, two, one, let's go.
There we go. How was that for dramatic beginning? Terrible exiting, editing, fading, etc., etc. But I thought, you know what? I want some music today. I want a little bit of
I love you.
yes. I want a bit of love today. Today we're talking about something that's very sensitive and something that really affects people across the world, regardless of what level you might be. It affects CEOs and people starting out at the very same way, in the very same way. And I wanted to talk about it. I want to talk about it again because it's come up again, and I think it's important we address it again. And I'm talking about imposter syndrome, right? And I think that the reason I want to do it again is because there are different types of imposter syndrome. I know we talked about this in season 1, but I think it's important that if you're a speaker of influence, if you're an expert that speaks, an authority that speaks, you might actually have this, and you might not know it, or maybe you have it and you don't know what to do about it. Now, I'd like to qualify that I am not a psychologist or psychiatrist. These are tips that I know work for people I've worked with. These are tips that I know that people in the space are talking about. So I just wanted to do an episode about the imposter syndrome. I think it's important to remind everybody that it doesn't just happen to people at the beginning of their path. There's plenty of high-level CEOs, high-level founders, millionaires, billionaires, very successful entrepreneurs, highly respected influencers that still suffer from imposter syndrome and need to, on a regular basis, need to address it. But I think what's really, really important is that you understand what are the different types of imposter syndrome, and then, of course, what you can do about it. All right. Now, again, if you need support with this, if you need help for this, connect with me. I will gladly refer you on to whoever it might be, the best person suited to you. And for a lot of people with imposter syndrome, it's just a minor tweak. It's about dialing up the area of confidence, but you've got to understand also where this all comes from, where it stems from, right? So there are 5 different types of imposters, okay? Imposter syndromes. Now, some people don't believe in imposter syndrome, and you can make that argument for that. I'm going to talk to the people out there that every single day feel it, that every single day struggle with it, and therefore might need to embrace it in a different way. So I'm going to just talk to the people that do think it's a thing. And that's going to be me. And that's going to be the episode today. So the first one I want to talk about is the perfectionist, right? And these are the people that everything has to be perfect. And if it's not perfect, they feel like a fraud. And it puts massive, massive pressure on them. So you can imagine as someone that's speaking to influence, someone that's getting out in front of stage, that the tiniest thing to them is magnified. It's huge. A typo on a slide or something going slightly wrong to them, the whole presentation collapsed and the stage fell in and all the audience fell asleep. Like, to them, that is just so hard to process. So they're always striving for perfection, but not in a way that empowers them, in a way that actually disempowers them massively. The next one is the soloist, right? And that's the person, the person that believes they have to do everything on their own, and they have to work harder and harder and harder and harder and harder and harder and harder, and they need to be smarter and smarter and smarter and smarter till they choke, right? That's what I mean. That is the soloist. Excuse me. I appear to have a frog in my throat. There we go. Right, so that's the soloist. Harder and smarter than everyone else. The other one is, of course, is a natural genius. And of course, these are the ones that they believe they're only going to succeed because of their natural talent, right? But equally, they don't feel that their natural talent was enough, and they're going to get found out that they're not enough. And that's known as the natural genius. Excuse me. And the next one is the superwoman, the superman. So while the soloist works really hard and needs to be smarter, the perfectionist is always striving for perfection, right? The superwoman or superman, actually, they feel the pressure to excel in many areas, right? Like all areas or everything they touch, they should be like authorities and masters. So every talk they do has to be a blockbuster, and every time they crack a joke, it has to be amazing. And they've got to excel in all these areas. Actually, is to a lot of self doubt. And then the last one is the chronic, right? So I think this is probably the most famous out of the five that most people know as imposter syndrome. Although the other four are out there, this is ones that people relate to when you talk about imposter syndrome. It's that feeling of inadequacy, right? And it doesn't matter what level they get to. As I said, I've worked with some highly successful, wealthy people who still suffer from imposter syndrome. And so that's the chronic, right? That's the one that continuously feels inadequate. So there are some things you can do about it when you have imposter syndrome. So this is why working with a professional in this space is really important. And it's knowing what is the source of the imposter syndrome, right? Where do they come from? So our thoughts create a reality, they affect our emotions and things like that. So where in the past what in the past are they rooted to? Are they locked onto self doubt? So understanding the source can help you tackle this really effectively. Like, where does it come from? Where did it start? Because then we can address it, right? It's a bit like if you know what causes something, then you can treat it. But if you don't know what's causing it, then you can't treat it. Because once you know where it comes from, you can actually reframe your thoughts. So instead of focusing on the negative self talk or that voice in your head or that feeling of, that stressful feeling or the anxiety in your chest, you can actually reframe your thoughts. And you can just move yourself to places of peace and tranquility. So meditation is very good for this as well. And you're able to show up present to the experience versus the loud voices in your head. And you see yourself in a different way. And of course, this takes time, right? And it's about, reminding yourself of your accomplishment and your experiences. It is a continuous process of reframing your thoughts, working on your presence, reducing the anxiety. So there's tools for that, and that's one of the ways you can as well help with cope with your imposter syndrome. The other thing you can do, of course, is which is imperative, is have supportive people around you. So a mentor in your space, or a mentor in this space, a coach, but also someone that really is an expert in imposter syndrome, right? Have a supportive community around you, because one of the key things to imposter syndrome is the feeling of isolation, is the feeling of loneliness. And if we can counter that by being surrounded by people who are supportive, again, that will help your imposter syndrome to kick the curve. The other aspect, of course, which I bang on about again and again and again and again, is practicing, right? Regardless of what imposter syndrome you feel you might have or you do have, practicing it is really important. Practicing your talk, practicing what can go wrong, practicing what can go right, practicing in front of people to get feedback, right? Which is the next one, is really going to help your imposter syndrome, because you'll get real live experience by doing it, and then you'll know also what kicks in your head, right? What are the things that kick in your head that enable you to manage your imposter syndrome? And by actually practicing and seeking out feedback, so doing practice runs or bits of your talk in front of people, that is what's going to help you deal with the imposter syndrome as well. And the key thing I want to talk about when it comes down to imposter syndrome is truly embracing imperfection, right? It's a big one for people, right? Because a lot of people are absolutely obsessed with being perfect. Got to be perfect. It's got to be perfect. And actually, it's a hindrance. It's a far bigger hindrance than it is an empowerment tool. And I disagree. I think progress trumps perfection. I think progress is more important than perfection. And perfection is a concept that very few of us truly get to experience. Period. Right? Very few people truly experience perfection. Now, while some of us get close to us, some of us strive to it, if it's done in a way that disempowers us, we need to let go of that. You need to let go of imperfection. And I think a great version to reframe perfection is this: perfection is accepting that you're right and wrong, right? Your ability to accept when you're right and wrong is probably the closest thing to perfection versus this idyllic thing that is perfect. Now, if you strive for it and it empowers you and it motivates you in an empowering way, game on. But if it's slowly chipping away at your soul and destroying you, you need to let go of perfection, embrace imperfection. And then the last thing I quickly want to talk about before we wrap this up is remember, it's not about you. It's about the audience. It's about the people you're influencing. It's about your message. It's about your why. It's about what you can do by standing on stage and using speaking to influence how you become this, how you're the expert that can change people's lives. Now, if you focus on the message and you focus on the people, then you won't have to worry about your imposter syndrome too much because it's not about you, it's about them. Okay. So that was a little mini episode about how to manage imposter syndrome, right? So identify the source of your imposter syndrome, reframing your thoughts, surrounding yourself with support, practice, 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 ask for feedback, embracing imperfection, and of course, focusing on the message. These are key aspects to managing your imposter syndrome. Whether it'll go away completely, I don't know, but this will certainly help. This is a good beginning on how you can uh, embrace it, live with it, make friends with it, and therefore go out there and make the impact you want and the influence you want when you're speaking. Right. So this has been another episode of the Public Speaking Expert Podcast. I am looking forward to hearing you and seeing you, and in the next episodes. Make sure you like, subscribe, and leave us a comment, leave us a rating. We're getting a lot of you watching and listening, but not leaving a comment. So leave a comment, leave us a rating. It helps us. It helps us climb the ranking. It helps us go up the ranking. And we look forward to connecting with you. And of course, if you do send me a picture of your rating, I will send you a copy of my book. So there we are, people. Till the next time, be seen, be heard, and always